We are here today with Sandra KUBA, Sandy KUBA. For those people who are my followers in my social media, and also people who read it, what happened with Disney and Disney former employees, Sandra KUBA is a person who is a whistleblower, and she has a lawsuit currently against Disney. But we hear about the problems that she reported, financial problems, and she was ignored. That's why she escalated the situation at the point that she is today. However, we don't know too much about Sandra KUBA, her life, and how she developed herself inside of the company. And now we have Sandra here to tell us something about her and also about what happened really, what is the problem, what she discovered, and who she reported. Welcome, Sandra.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Okay. So I want to ask you, besides to be a person, very strong person, because fight with Disney, you have to be strong. It's not any other way that you can do it. Beside that, and demonstrate that you are a brave person, I want to know the human being.
Okay. Well, my story begins in a small town just across the border of Pennsylvania, small town in New York State called Elmira. And I grew up primarily in Elmira. My mother brought us down here in 1969 for about a year. We went back to New York, and then I came down again in 72, 73, when my brother was in the Navy. And my father died when I was 3, died from cancer. And my mother finished raising me by herself. She had developed multiple sclerosis by the time I was 9. So I'm part Native American on my father's side. And
Native American, what tribe you are, what descendants you have?
I am from the Seneca tribe, which is part of the Iroquois Nation, and I'm an Indian princess.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. So I grew up in Elmira. I went to school there, and then I went to Alfred University for a couple of years in Alfred, New York. And my mother had developed cancer herself, and so I went back and went to my hometown and went to the college there called Elmira College. They had just got the accreditation for their accounting students to be able to sit for the CPA exam. So at this point, I was able to do that. I was able to go back home and finish up there. Elmira and Alfred are among 5 colleges that are sister colleges. One of them being Cornell, which is right there at the Ithaca, Elmira, Ithaca, Corning area. And I did not go to Cornell because Cornell did not have an accounting program at all, and last I knew, still doesn't.
Okay.
So, but they all use the same textbooks and everything, so it would have been the same education anyway. And so I went to Elmira College and I finished up there. I got my bachelor's degree, which was in accounting. I had focused on accounting in high school, and I then. I then went into, I started with not-for-profit accounting. I went in then to public accounting. I sat for my CPA exam and passed that with some pretty high grades. From there, I went into, I met my husband and we moved to California. And I went to into law firm accounting.
Okay.
And then I wanted to go into manufacturing, so I went to work for Belkin International. At that time it was Belkin Components, now it's Belkin International. And was there with them for a few years. And then we moved here. I went to work for Orange County National Golf, which was building the hotel and restaurant and all of that during that time. And after about 6 months, I had the opportunity to go to work for Disney. So I have about 5 industries of experience, and then of course a variety of experience through industries through the public accounting. In public accounting, I did have an opportunity to do some taxes and things, but my main concentration was audit, on the audit side. At the end of 2015, I decided to go get my master's degree and update my skills, which I did. I had been, I'd done some forensic accounting for this one is, with the CPA firm in Miami that I went with. It was a small firm that I went with, and it merged with Touche, and then I'm with Deloitte. And so I went, after that I went into a smaller regional firm that had offices in New York and Jacksonville. And so during that time I had a chance to do some forensic accounting. I'd always been interested in auditing. I was very good at that. And I went back and got my master's degree in 2015, finished in 2016, still working full-time with Disney, and was going to school and working full-time, but both of them were full-time. And I still maintained a 4.0 average. Won a bunch of awards, was put into a National Honor Society with them, and then also asked to go into a special leadership society, which after my graduation I ended up doing some more classes on for that at their request. So I finished my master's degree, which was actually in forensic accounting. I put the concentration on forensics.
Why put the concentration in forensic?
Well, I was always very interested in audit and looking at it from that perspective, and looking at for fraud and learning more about Sarbanes-Oxley, learning more about all the current requirements.
You like investigation?
Yes,
that's kind
yes.
of the thing.
More or less. I've always compared it to being like a detective. Except for it's with numbers and
in accounting means
so very much like a detective. And so this gave me an opportunity to really look at Edgar, which is part of the SEC website, and to go in and look at different companies and really get into analysis and forensic analysis in today, as far as in today's environment, and because back at the time I had done it back in the 80s, we didn't have the computers.
Yeah, it was different.
And so it was a little different. And this gave me, like I said, a chance to update my skills, and that's what I was doing. And so,
I want to ask you, before Disney, you say that you're working with different firms.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever has any problem or conflict with any of those companies?
Are you talking about as far as finding
legal
fraud
problems,
and stuff like
legal
that?
Problems that you file a lawsuit against any of the companies?
There was one. It was one of the law firms that I worked for, the last one, and I can't get into all the details of it because we did settle that. But it was involving pregnancy discrimination. That was at the point where I got pregnant. I got pregnant for twins, and I went to a miscarriage with the one, and managed to carry Bobby to full term. But they were not happy with the fact that I had gotten pregnant. They were not happy with it at all, and they were concerned about that I would be missing time and such. And so there were some things that went on there, and I went ahead and I left. Right after I had my son, I tried to go back, and there was a problem. There were some issues there, and I said, no, I don't think so. So I left, and that's when I went to work for Balkan Components.
Okay, but you don't have any whistleblower with any of them.
No, I never.
You don't found any discrepancies in their financials or anything that you can be able to report, like it happens with this?
No, not with my employers. Now, obviously, with my forensic work, there were some things in particular, because I would be involved with an audit, and there would be some suspicions, and they would have me go in while I was doing that audit. I would actually be doing some
Yeah, but not with your employer.
But not with my employer. No, I never saw that. And I was coming, now that I was older, I was coming more towards the end. And I thought to myself, I've always been very fortunate. And you hear about these things, you heard about Enron and all that. And I thought, I've been very fortunate. And then I have never had to deal with anything like that. I've always been very careful. I've never had an issue like that before. So I consider myself pretty lucky. You hear horror stories of things, and I was like, thank goodness I never had that happen. And then
yeah, well, everything, the thing is, through the life or different jobs, we learn something from each group of people that we know, or each company, usually. That's why I call my attention, because one of the things is, now that you are in lawsuit, you're going to hear that Disney going to try to say she's a constantly complainer.
Yes.
So that's why I want that you tell the people, if you are really constantly complainer, like go to the companies and file a lawsuit, or you go to the companies just to look in a whistleblower because you are looking for money.
Yeah.
This is the idea. When you lawsuit Disney, people says, oh, she's looking for money. She's going to hit the lottery, Disney lottery, which is not true.
Right.
Because Disney doesn't pay to employees any lottery. Disney pay for damages like a life loss to a guest, but not to employees.
Right.
Disney doesn't never pay millions like people suppose when we lawsuit Disney. Oh, she wants to be a millionaire with Disney. No, this is not true. This is more than the money. This is dignity. This is integrity. Right. It's not any other thing. Well,
it's funny. It's funny you should say that, because that's just it. I haven't never had that situation before, and even with the lawsuit that I was in, it was a very small amount. We settled for a very small amount, because really what I wanted to do with there is really to let them know that wasn't acceptable and don't do it again to anybody else. By that time, I was already gone from the company. I went off to another company, and people at the company that I worked for, which was Belkin again, did not even know this was going on.
Okay.
They didn't even know the lawsuit was going on, because it really wasn't that much. We filed it, we went into mediation, and we just decided to settle.
Yeah.
Because it was a huge enough deal to be able to say something, but to let them know, don't do it again.
Exactly.
And Disney, of course, will try to say, and has tried to say, I filed a series of complaints against the company for a variety of different things. In reality, if you look at it, it was only for one thing, and it was FMLA. I had the issues, and with that, it was they would retaliate, and every time they bring a new supervisor on, he would be poking into that and trying to undermine it in some way, and I would have to complain again. And in between, of course, there was a lot of retaliation afterwards. So basically, it was FMLA discrimination and then retaliation, because I had complained about that. And
FMLA, you have FMLA for you?
For my son.
For your son.
And my son, because my son has is Asperger's, which is part of the autism spectrum. And Bobby at the time, and particularly in his younger years, needed a lot of therapy. And so it was intermittent. So to get him to appointments and such. The funny part of it is I never really, you could say I took it, but I really didn't take it. I gave it back. Because what I would do, and they had approved this, that I would go ahead, because in the beginning I was doing this, and then there was problems, then they allowed me to do it. They would always know up front. My husband used to take him to his appointments. I got to the point, I said, okay, but then I would have to pick up on it suddenly if he had to go out of town, because he was in aviation. And I had the situation where then I would have to go and say, oh, it turns out I've got to go and take him this week. So this way besides that, he was having to get up in the middle of the day, and he's working on airplanes. So I said, from now on, I'm going to take him to all these appointments. That way, ahead of time. Always ahead of time. And then what would happen is, after I was done, I would go back home and I would work in the evening, which actually was beneficial, because when there was things for Disneyland, which was 3 hours behind us, I was, they were still in the office, and then I was back in the office, whether I was in the office or working online. So they really, in the end, if you ever looked at it, I really, except for when I had to take the FMLA at the end, because the medical leave, because of all the stress and all the things they were doing, I really never took FMLA time, I always paid it back that same day,
Exactly.
even though I'd left early.
Exactly.
It was always paid back.
So really, you don't take time off,
And
because you complete the hours later.
Exactly, on the same day, and that way, you know, I was able to come back, and that I could take care of things in the evening. And people would often say to me, when do you rest, or why are you still on at 9:30 at night or whatever? And one time they had piled me down with so much work as they did that I had to pull an all-nighter and still be back in the next morning because of what they had done. And
I have a question. You say your son has autism, or kind of autism.
Mm-hmm.
That is covered by Disney insurance?
That's the funny part of it. A lot of it is not covered. Disney had specifically had their insurance company exclude a lot of the therapies and stuff for people with autism. In my case, it was speech for him, speech and occupational and physical therapy. But when it came to something that was specific for autism, like the ABA, the Applied Behavioral Therapy that they had, they had that extra specifically excluded.
And you know, if another companies has that exclusion, is a general for the insurance company, or just Disney?
It was Disney. And there was one executive that was actually working with Quest here in town, because Quest was telling me about it, that he was working with Quest, and he was trying to get Disney to add the ABA on to the insurance to stop excluding it.
I don't understand how they can exclude that when today's day is more common, or we can say more we recognize more that the difficulty and the condition. So how they excluded that specifically?
No, they did, and we know that. I've talked with the Center for Autism Related Disabilities, who told me that Disney will pick up the people with autism, give them the job, and they make a big deal out of it. What they don't know is that about a month later, they will terminate the person with autism, saying they were too slow, they couldn't learn it, or whatever. There's been remarks that they've made about me recently, saying that I have Asperger's. Well, many times I'll even refer to myself as we, those, of us, because not only is there the FMLA, but there's the ADA, and under the Americans with Disabilities Act, the caregivers are also covered, because, in other words, if it's something that, because of my relationship with him, that I'm being discriminated against, which was what was going on there. Then, therefore, I'm actually covered under the Americans with Disabilities Act. So I will say that. Now, they're trying to say, well, because she has Asperger's, she is, these are the reasons why, to explain her performance issues. I'm not aware of any performance issues I had. And I certainly was not told of any performance issues.
Hold on a minute.
This just came out recently.
It's allowed Disney to use as excuse for action that against employee use the medical condition? Because if it was the case that you have, it's your medical condition.
Yes.
How you can use that to against an employee performance job?
I actually did receive a tip from someone in Disneyland that told me a couple of years ago that Disney was going to say that because I have Asperger's, that because of that, there's some quirky things in my personality and in my character that would cause that. And I said, that sounds like discrimination right there.
Yes.
And I actually, this person had written this to me, and I was like, well, that's discrimination to begin with. So, I mean, it showed they did not think very highly of people on the autism spectrum, and that was first, and that's what I saw with my son. And there was a day my husband brought him in to the office, and the one woman I worked for, who was very upset about my being an FML, my husband noticed she just sat there and was glaring at Bobby, and Bobby was only about 7 years old. Luckily, he didn't notice it, but my husband did, and she was just sitting there glaring at him.
Well, it's something else that people need to know, because actually I opened an investigation with Department of Labor about that, and it's this. As I understood, and I investigated, and attorneys told me to, when a person requests FMLA by a doctor, go with the doctor have to fill a form. The doctor is responsible for what he put it in that form. It's not a lie. So it's two types of FMLA, permanent or temporary. Some people has temporary FMLA because situations happen. Have to take care of my mother, that she's sick. This is temporary. We don't know how long the mother gonna be sick. At least that is a permanent condition. Permanent condition, I'm going to put myself as example. I suffer of migraines. When I have migraine, I have to be 2 or 3 days completely out. I can be able to see light. I am dizzy. If I take the medication, I'm going to sleeping. So I'm not able to driving. I'm not able to do anything. So for that reason, I have FMLA permanent, because migraine doesn't going to disappear. This permanent. When I have at the beginning, that was a problem. That was a permanent. Then Disney came with a new rule. Every year you have to renew your FMLA.
Yes.
When I went with my doctor, my primary doctor, with the paper, he was upset.
Yes.
He says, Disney insulting me, so they don't believe what I say. This is a permanent condition. Why I have to renew and fill again every year this paper? This is ridiculous.
That's what I felt.
So when I saw his reaction, I called Department of Labor. So Department of Labor opened an investigation. They never told me what happened. They don't tell me the results. Next was, I see, anytime that I ask for a ADO, which is a day of duties without payment. You have something to do, an emergency happens, you request ADO, Disney doesn't have to pay for that day. They put in my record FMLA. They use my FMLA. When I request ADO, it's not because I have migraine. If I have migraine, I go directly and says FMLA, migraine.
Exactly.
So I discovered that Disney was using my FMLA for my absence, to cover my absence. So what happened with that? When you really need the FMLA, it's not available because they already spent the FMLA. And FMLA you don't gain if you don't work in. So you have to work in certain number of hours in order to earning days, hours, FMLA. So they used the FMLA when I was proper to use. When I needed, I don't have. What happened? Point in your records. 3 points in your record is a reprimand. So that's going to be the retaliatory action. We don't want Sonia here. She loves to the company. We need to kick her out. And this is one of the way. Attendance. This is the easy way to do it.
Right.
So go ahead.
That was that was very similar to me as well. The situation with me with the FMLA was that this woman was discriminating against me, making remarks like she wanted to show me my pattern. And of course, I had a pattern because Bobby had therapy. And when she showed it to me, it was all the FMLA appointments. And very abusive and making it very difficult for me to take the FMLA. And then she wanted me to take it for everything, much like you were saying. And she wanted me to say that that this other thing was FMLA. When I had to take Bobby one day to the doctor, I needed to take him. And I said, I can't say that because this one here is not FMLA. I said, he's got a rash and I need to take him to the doctor. And before I could get him to the doctor, the rash had become infected because she was giving me such a hard time. And Bob was out of town.
Oh, wow.
So it put me in a difficult situation because if I said it was FMLA, I'd be lying. And if I didn't say it was FMLA, she was not giving me the ability to leave that day to take him. and it was a Friday.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a very bad situation. They finally looked into her, but they used someone who was not unbiased. The senior manager who had become that I had worked for, that I'd been hired by, he had become the director, and he was anything but unbiased. He had not been happy with me because I wouldn't net a $12 million out of balance for one system against a $48 million balance out of balance for another system, and it was actually $3 billion. $48 million is just the system had truncated the first two digits. So, and I said they don't have anything to do with each other. So he really wasn't happy with me because of that. I left the department. I got out of that department, and I went to this other department. And unfortunately, he became the director not long afterwards. I had held it up because I had done that, and it resulted in what was called the CRS DPMS 30-day plan, in which the vice president gave us 30 days to figure out what was wrong with these systems.
Mm-hmm.
And so he wasn't.
That was the first time that you found something?
Yeah. It had been off for a year. It had been off for a year, and the system had tried to cut a check. Mm-hmm. And the way that it was is the person could pay for something with a credit card, but the system would pay it back to them with a check, and it tried to cut a $3 billion check. Well, that was stopped, but they never got the systems back into whack. And so I went and I found out that it actually happened in March of 1998, and when I started with the company, it was March 29th, 1999.
So that was before. So question for the people to understand: when you discovered that problem with the money, where that money going? It's not the person who do all these runs with the system and took the money, right?
Right. No,
it's not the person.
It's no, and it happened that there was an error in the system in the way the person had entered something, but there was an internal control problem in that you could actually pay something with a credit card, cancel the reservation, and the system would have sent you that money back, and it would send you that money back with a check. And the funny part of it is, in this particular instance, when the person put that amount into the wrong field, they put the credit card number into the wrong field.
Okay.
And that's what they put that into the amount field. When they did that it didn't charge the credit card. But despite that fact, the system was showing like it had been received, and it was trying to shoot a check back to the person. Luckily, it was caught by accounts payable. So it stopped the money from going back out because it was such a large amount. But it would be possible, yes, it would have been possible back at that time for you to pay with the credit card, cancel it, and turn around and get a check.
Uh-huh.
And that's how it would have been refunded to you. And here, your credit card could have been somebody else's credit card. There could have been fraud, or there might have not even been a credit card, a real credit card at that point. And I brought that up. I'm like, why would the system try to do this? I mean, this is an internal control issue. Well, so I wasn't too well liked by this manager, and so I had started to see too much. And he even said to me at one point, he said to me, it was like October, the end of October, beginning of November of 2000, the year 2000, and I was looking to get another job at this point and get out of there, and there were some things that had went on, and I said something to him, and his voice changed, and it went much deeper, and he said to me, "When did you stop trusting me?"